Hello and welcome to Alternative to Meds podcast. My name is Debbie Nelson. I'm excited today to introduce someone. I go out and I do my cyber stalking, and I get really inspired the more that I see more and more people that are getting out there in front of the camera and actually shedding light to an epidemic of mental health crisis and problems in this country. And Dr. Teralyn is one of them. Hello.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. And I wanted to add to that what I'm a little bit exhausted by is just talking about mental health crisis without talking about solutions, right? Without talking about what to do. It's just this, it seems like the conversation ends there. Things are terrible. Yay. And that's it. So let's talk about the other stuff, shall we?
I love you because that's the way I think. I keep saying, all right, there's the solution. I don't know what your
What is it?
Everyone's solution is different, people. We can't keep saying that enough, but there are solutions and there's multiple solutions and there's different levels, So
because you didn't get to this conundrum from one thing. Mental health is multifaceted, so there's going to be a multifaceted answer for you as well. And we are all physiologically different, so that requires different solutions for every person. So there's nothing that is cut and dry here, which seems overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. We'll get there.
So Teralyn, how did you get into this? Because we kind of, as I talked to you, I got super excited thinking about training that you've done that were similar to what I was trained in. And I always love hearing the story because that's what people connect with, as they realize they're not the only person. So share, how did you get into brain health?
So I used to be a prison shrink, right? So I practiced psychology in the prison in the state that I'm in, and it was actually the prison system that had the most mentally ill inmates in the state. So we have a system in my state where other prisons would send this particular institution their most hard to handle, whether it's behaviorally hard to handle or mental health issues hard to handle individuals. That's where I got my training from. And I distinctly recall starting to get into like, what else is there? Because it was very much psychiatric medication centered there. Like the amount of psych meds prescribed was astronomical. And I remember searching, and this is the early days of Google, like searching like, what else is there? And I happened to run across this article on omega-3 fatty acids, and we were treatment planning a particular inmate who had some serious aggression. And this article was done in a jail, and they did it on inmates who had serious aggression, and they introduced them to omega-3 fatty acids, and the amounts and stays that they had in segregation decreased, which means their aggression level also went down. So here's me, I'm taking this article. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing something good here, people. Can we get this guy some omega-3 fatty acids, And so I take it in, I sit down in the care planning meeting, and the psychiatrist looks at me and he says, you're not a dietitian. You shouldn't even be bringing this here, and shut me down. And I walked away going, okay, well, I know where my place is here, that's for sure. And I'll never forget that, because I thought, I know I'm onto something here. I just know it. And with the poor nutrition that is offered to inmates, number one, right? And so I felt very defeated, but I didn't stop. So shortly after that, I went into private practice, and my private practice at that time was primarily women. And as you know, women are prescribed medications at a higher rate than men, like 50% higher. It's ridiculous. And they say, well, women go to the doctor more. I'm like, is that what it is? Or, is it just placation? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so I was seeing these women on these psych meds, and they were getting worse and worse, and their experiences in life were getting more and more hopeless. And I remember, again, thank goodness for Google, I got right on, and that's where I found the class that you and I both took. So I found research on amino acids, right? And I was like, this is exciting. Oh my gosh, you mean like GNC or like nutritional stores for bodybuilders has this stuff in the store? Like, I was like, this is crazy. This is amazing. And the people in the health community, like the bodybuilders and things, already knew about this stuff, but they used it for muscle building and endurance and things like that. They weren't necessarily using it for mental health issues. Anyway, so I found this research and I was so intrigued, and I would sheepishly approach my clients and be like, so L-tyrosine is this amino acid and it can improve your dopamine. And I really think that your depression is more dopamine related than it might be serotonin. Are you willing to try? And every time I'd get, yes, I'm really willing to try just about anything. And so I would send them off and I'd tell them where to go. And they'd come back after a week or two after taking it. And they'd be like, why didn't anybody tell me about this before? And I was like, wait, it worked? Like, wait, it actually worked. And I was like, holy crap, it's working. Anyways, so that's when I stumbled upon the Alliance for Addiction and Mental Health Solution. And that's when I got hooked up with the same instructor that you had, blah, 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 around the same time that you
I know,
had.
we probably were in
I
the same
know.
course. I have to think back because it's been 8 years, right?
Yes,
It was
yes.
the same light bulb that
Uh,
went off with me too, because I kept thinking the same thing. I'm like, how come nobody talks about this and tries this first?
yes, exactly.
You can just try
And so
this.
after that, yeah, after that, I felt like I had a framework, a little bit of a framework to work within, and I did it more and more. And since then, I've taken multiple trainings in nutrition and functional medicine, and, just kind of blossomed from there. But it works every time. Pretty much it works every time.
So,
If the client is willing to do it, it works pretty much every time.
do you know, it's so cute. When I listened to you talk, I used you as an example to one of my therapist friends because we got kind of in a debate, kind of like what you spoke about, where someone said, well, you're not a nutritionist. You're
Oh,
not.
yes, for sure. Yeah.
And he kind of gave that same kind of speech to me. And I said, or talked about that. And I said, the interesting thing, if I had it in my playbook, everyone that's a therapist would be a nutritionist. Because why aren't you asking
100%.
that question? Why doesn't a
100%.
why aren't psychiatrists and therapists, they are the first line of defense. So if that kid that's coming into you got up this morning and had Fruit Loops for breakfast,
Yes.
ate a burrito from school and had a Lunchable after school as a snack, there's a reason that they probably have ADHD.
Or had nothing for breakfast
Yep.
and didn't eat anything until lunch. I mean, so this is a fascinating conversation because, you found me from TikTok, which is
Yep.
where my big audience is. And it's so interesting to me because all these other disciplines get to talk about mental health. But dang, if you're in mental health, how dare you talk about nutrition? I've been seeing a lot of dietitians on there talking about mental health. And I'm like, but if I talked about food, I would be
never
like
thought of that.
stepping outside of my box here. Everybody's talking about mental health, but yet therapists have to be in this little box over here, just talking about thinking errors or some craziness like that, So it's a real fascinating place, a fascinating playground, if you will, at this point. But I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think every therapist should have this kind of knowledge, at least on a psychoeducational base, like at
Right.
least on the knowledge of like improving protein, period. Like that's okay, because protein is the building blocks for your neurotransmitters. Why isn't that part of a conversation of a therapist? We should all know that. Our brain is not disconnected from our body. It's right on top of the rest of our body. It makes a difference. And when you're talking about kiddos like this, like I have written into IEPs protein breaks, and the parents will bring the protein in, and it's like magic. This kid suddenly doesn't have the aggressive outbursts that they once had because they're being fed,
Wow.
So if you just ask some questions like, what did you eat and when was the last time you ate, especially with kids, you're going to get long periods of time of lack of nutrition or zero nutrition. And you're going to find out times of day when that kid is at their worst, right? And usually that's a time of day where their brain is just hungry and their body is just starving.
Well,
So,
that was something through Christina Veselak that I got to learn from
yeah,
the academy was, I had an alcohol problem. I didn't have a long history of it. I consider myself, I was a prodigy late in life. But, it was one of those things I took off with it. But never did anyone ever ask me what my history was, what I did. Well, I got up, I take my Adderall in the morning. And I rush out the door and I drink 3 cups of coffee to try to make myself through the day. And I've got my Adderall, right? And then about
Yep.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm crashing. I'm crashing.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to like, and that was whenever, of course, happy hour and going and getting a bottle of wine became an essential part of my
Yep.
day. Never did I ever in a recovery center or anyone talk to me about protein intake or balancing blood sugar levels, that had something to do with chronic drinking.
Right. It's very interesting because I have toured many a treatment center, right? And I'll be the first one heading beeline for the kitchen. And I'll be like, what are your menus? And normally I get looked at like, why do you care? You
Yep.
know, as I see like a big plate of cookies set out all day long and the caffeinated coffees right there ready to go in a beautiful treatment centers, you know, and I'm like, y'all are missing the boat. You are missing it for these people, you know, like
That's what I always tell them. I'm like, until you value what someone's putting in their mouth as much as the therapy that they're receiving, it's not a competition. It's a direct correlation to having the long-term success.
right, you can't
Right. I totally
you
believe I'm a testament of that mentality
oh
because
yeah.
if I'd continue going down that path, I mean, they'd stopped and got you bags of candy.
Yeah, oh yeah. Even in the mental health world, like some of the most anxious people that have come into my so I practice telehealth now, thanks to the pandemic, right? But I used to have an office. And so people would come into my office and they would be hungry and you could tell they were bouncing their legs, fidgety, and they just couldn't pay attention to therapy. You cannot engage in therapy if your brain is shut off. Like, and your brain will be on if you have properly eaten. So I used to have ready-made protein shakes right in the
Oh,
lobby
wow,
for
that's a
them.
great idea.
Hmm. Yes. And so I would say, have you eaten today? I would always get, yes, I have. And then I'm like, what did you eat? Coffee and a donut. I'm like, would
Yeah.
you mind just going out and getting a protein shake from the lobby? And they do, and they all settle down. Like it's like a calming effect. It's really incredible.
So on your website, I noticed that you write quite a bit about like adrenal fatigue and how it's related to mental health, and you kind of have a history of that yourself.
Mhm.
What are some of the things that you notice that when someone's suffering from that you can do far as a practitioner on your side to help them?
So some of the biggest things someone can do if they have those types of functional cortisol problems, right? So again, these are functional things. They're not looking for disease states, right?
Right.
So some of the things people can do, one of the easiest things that you can do is, well, learn to meditate. And everyone always bucks me on this one. I can't shut my brain off. I'm like, listen, I learned to meditate with Buddhist monks. Like, you
Right.
know, and it's been the most incredible experience of my life, you know, to do that. And it's not about shutting your brain off. It's about controlling your thoughts. It's about having a singular attention. So that would be number one. Number two, easy vitamin C. Vitamin C, the more stress you're under, the more your adrenals call for vitamin C. That's not hard. That's not hard to do. It's cheap. You know,
Right.
it's ascorbic acid is easy to come by, you
Yeah.
know. So those, yeah, adaptogenic herbs are great. If people don't know what those are, it's like ashwagandha is a big adaptogenic herb, which basically means the herbs help you adapt to stress. Those are pretty big ones. The list can go on. I joke and I'm like, so I'll start with one thing and the next thing you know, I'll have all the things. I'm like, okay, wait, where is the easiest place to start? And I really think managing your stress load, which basically in 3 buckets. So we have emotional stress, we have dietary stress, and then we have inflammatory stress. So those are the 3 bases of stress. And once we can break those down in those 3 categories, it's easier to take a look at it instead of just like stress all the things, you know?
Right.
So stress is a huge indicator of those cortisol issues. But it takes a long time to unwind out of a cortisol problem. You know, it's
What are
not a
the
quick
symptoms? I
fix.
mean, because we all of a sudden we hopped into
Oh,
that, but I mean, what are some of the symptoms? Like, what's the difference between true, adrenal fatigue and just fatigue?
so the symptoms, I'll explain it through a story. So when I went through this myself, and I cycle in and out of it, to be honest. Like you cycle in and out depending upon your stress load. But the first time I did it, I was so tired. I would wake up in the morning and I would think, okay, I've got all these things to do today, or I need to run an errand after work, right? I need to go get milk, we'll say, need to go get milk. By 2 o'clock, I'd be like, yeah, everybody can go without milk in the morning, and nobody needs milk and coffee in the morning. Like, I would convince myself that nobody needed the thing I needed to go get, right? That was the first indicator for me. And then I would lay down at night. I would be dreaming all day, what's too soon to put on my pajamas and go to bed, right? And then I would lay down at night and I wouldn't be able to sleep. I'd be laying there and like, are you kidding me? Like, all day I wanted to crash all day long. And now I have the opportunity and my brain just won't allow me. Well, when you look at you can do a cortisol saliva test 4 times a day. When you were to look at mine, like my AM was very low, and right before bed, it would pop up into the normal category, like normal range. So suddenly I was like, ooh, I'm awake now, and I'm like, oh. So that that was it for me. And after I went on protocol, adaptogenic herbs, better lifestyle, did a little bit more exercise, not heavy. You cannot do heavy exercise in this. You have to do light exercise. It took about 6 months, and I'll never forget the week, because I ran errands 3 times that week after work, like spontaneously, without having to like push myself to do it. I did it. And at the end of the week, I was like, oh my Lord, I ran errands I said to my husband, I ran errands 3 times this week. Like, it's a giant, accomplishment. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, you have no idea what that means. That means that I'm coming back. Like, I'm coming back to myself. I mean, I'm a type A drive person, type A drive. And when you lose your drive, like, that's devastating.
Right.
And the other thing we need to understand with cortisol is there's a relationship to our dopamine pathway. Our dopamine pathway requires cortisol to convert norepinephrine or noradrenaline to epinephrine, which is adrenaline. It requires cortisol. Well, if your cortisol is low, hanging low in there, you're not doing it. Your neurotransmitter pathway of dopamine is not functioning adequately. So you're losing drive. You're not concentrating. Your ambition is low. Like, all of these things are happening. And those are the people that go to the doctor and get put on an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And I'm like, they're targeting the wrong pathway for half the people out there, I believe. Like, I think most, and I don't know the research on this, people, so when you're listening, like, don't go search it, because I don't know. But in my anecdotal mind, it is more a dopamine cortisol problem than it is a serotonin issue in my mind for most people. So I don't know. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I think
It's
the
interesting
majority of, yeah,
I'm sorry, Teralyn. No, what I'm
that's right.
saying is that we notice that frequently too, because like you said, you immediately rattled off how many diagnoses are people getting for anxiety, depressive disorders.
Yeah,
And really, we're talking adrenal fatigue, and adrenal fatigue is actually very, very common. Um,
very.
yeah, and the antidote for it oftentimes is not
Yes.
complicated, but you're right. It's about finding out what works for each individual person. And
Yes.
I totally relate, because like I say, okay, I'm dopamine deficient. So what do I start my day with in order to get the dopamine going? Serotonin. I learned all those same things, right? But then it's like you said, you have to just keep on looking at things. Like all of a sudden I got introduced to a specialist that talks about EMF exposure, and I realized the EMF exposure was actually contributing as well. So there's so many avenues. That's why I like doing these kind of podcasts, is that we speak to like this beautiful health coach, like Teralyn's got a huge following of people. And I noticed that you take a shot, man, lots of times. That's why I love you so much, because she's
Oh, yes.
so incredibly authentic. She does not, she comes out, and even, I love one of your very favorite ones. I should splice it in here, is with you showing all your degrees, because
Yeah.
attacked, right? You get attacked, and here you've done all this extensive, she's done extensive training, people. We're not talking a little bit of training. We're talking about somebody who's highly trained. But she
Yes.
can get attacked, just kind of like she was saying, oh, if a dietitian talks about diet, but if she does, but understand, this woman and this specialist, and I call her a specialist because this mental health specialist has taken it to the next level, where she has trained under Harvard graduates that have programs that are teaching people on dietary things. She has studied under some of the country and world's best, leading the country, and when it comes to brain health. So I laugh because I am a geek and I've been trained under some of these things. And I get excited, as you guys can tell, when I do these videos, I get excited when I meet someone because I feel like it's another person that can help potentially you. That's really what I'm
Yes.
thinking. It's another
And
person.
here's me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that. I thought I shut my ringer down. And here's me going, how many more degrees do I need to get before I'm valid for the entire TikTok world? Like, how many more do I need to have? And my husband's like, no more. Don't get
Yeah,
any more. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get any more.
thing about you, I know the names that she's trained under. So we're not
Yes.
talking just a little bit. So to combine that someone is actually giving someone therapy that understands the psychological component, right? And has been put in this field that you know firsthand. You sat across from psychiatrists, like, who do you think you are? And you're like, I don't know, but
Yep.
it's really trying to.
I'm like, I'm sure I know who I am at this moment, but here's this little piece of research, you know. But the bigger thing with that is I didn't let it stop me, and it would have shut down a lot of people. And
Yeah,
what I realized was, unfortunately, in that environment, they are not open to this type of talk. They're not open to nutrition in that environment. And some of it is because they're restricted,
right.
lots of laws that restrict them. So I just took it to a different audience. I just took it to the audience that might be open to it. And I think that's it. And now I'm like, most recently, I'm like, I think maybe my role now as I get older and, maybe don't want to do therapy the way I was before is maybe to train other people. Maybe that's my legacy, is to take my knowledge and put it on other therapists and be like, listen, this is game changing. And I just did
Yes,
that. I just finished training my staff yesterday in brain health, and they are like giddy and excited. And they're like, I cannot wait to get out there. It's like holding a bunch of stallions back and opening the gate and letting them go, so I cannot wait to see what they're going to do. But I think that's probably the next level of my career.
that's awesome. I mean, I think, you taking it, like I said, and when I look at, and I've done podcasting and different things, and you'll get these comments where you're like, number one, I say at every single podcast I do, we are not telling anyone to instantly take themselves off of any medication. You need to be working
Oh,
always
never.
with a trained physician. What these antidotes and what these things are for the people that are really seeking lifelong solutions to deal with their health and mental health issues. I use this, so I speak personally. The reason I'm an activist in this role is because I personally have learned this, and there's no going back. You learn this and you want to share it.
No. And it's funny because that's what I tell any clinician, especially the ones I just trained. I'm like, okay, so this is going to change the way you view everything that you do. And there is no going back. There's no going back. Once you know this, and I'm like, okay, so now I feel, compelled to talk to other people about it. Because once you know something that is vital information for mental health or addiction, and you've got a client sitting in front of you, like, it's like compelling to start talking about it. And I feel like that should be our next generation of therapists right there. Do they need to be full nutritionists? No, but they need to understand brain health in a way of what comes next. Like, instead of just, oh, this is what happens to the brain, we think this is what happens to the brain with mental health or addictions. And that's the end of the conversation. It's not, how else can you help them change that neural pathway or their cortisol or whatever. It's like, this is just what happens, period. Okay, thank you. Now do
Right.
your CBT. Okay, like, really?
Right.
Yes. And people
Well,
are still struggling.
I think this was the first time. I mean, it was getting introduced in baby steps, getting introduced and being on the board of the Alliance. I was on the board for 4 or 5 years, and being exposed to the work of Dr. Julia Ross, working for Alternative to Med Center, learning underneath masters like Christina Veselak. Lyle Murphy, who owns the center, is absolutely, he's a genius. And so you can't help when you start learning this. And that's why I think these podcasts are so beneficial. It makes sense. I think the reason you have 50,000 people, are almost 300 that follow you.
390 something. Just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing. Is because number one, you put yourself out there. But because people connect with it, it makes sense. For the
Mhm.
first time, they're sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this. And can it be that simple? And actually, I'm sorry to say it can be sometimes.
Can
Um,
be. It can be.
can be. Yeah.
I want to give an example of the simplistic nature sometimes. Like I had a client that I was working with, and they would wake up in the middle of the night, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, you're not going to believe me when I tell you this, but if you have a little bit of protein before bed, you might just sleep through the night. It might just do it. I've done videos on this on TikTok as well, but this person decided to eat a bowl of cottage cheese before bed and comes back to me and said, you mean to tell me that cottage cheese is going to help? It helped me sleep the way that I did this entire week since I've seen you last. It was cottage cheese. And I'm like, well, it was the protein, but yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Well,
That
because
did
what do
it for
we
you.
crave? We're craving the carbohydrates and the sweets late at
Mhm.
night. That's what we're in the
Yep.
cut pantries. We're looking
Yep.
for the bowl of cereal, the ice cream, the carbs, and that
Right.
actually makes it worse. And but in
Yes.
turn, that's what we're craving. So you're right. I started like I keep nuts. I do pumpkin seeds. I boil eggs. I keep hard boiled eggs always in my fridge
Oh yeah,
constantly.
me too.
Yeah,
Yep.
'cause it's something easy that I could do, even
Easy.
like a tablespoon of almond butter.
Yep.
But it's beautiful when there's all different faces of this movement that are happening. So we've got you, we've got Dr. Campbell, we have Lyle Murphy, we have, Dr. Leslie Korn. I could go down the list, down the list, down the list. My goal is that every time we do these podcasts, when we do social media, that we link arms so that people understand that they're not alone and that there are solutions. And there's different degrees of solutions.
Yes.
Teralyn does completely everything online. So if you're seeking someone who can be able to help you navigate like cortisol levels or maybe some nutritional support along with a coaching, a life coach, she's absolutely phenomenal, obviously. And then obviously if you are suicidal and it's much worse, there's residential care and other areas of care, which is, like what alternative meds. There's getting to be a growing population of brain health experts. And the reason I love you, multiple reasons, is that you literally are a person that helped on a very analytical basis to begin with, and you hopped over from your arena into a scientific world of nutrition and other things and supplements, and had to take a hit. Basically, you're kind of one of the
Mm.
pioneers that's taking a hit as a therapist that's saying, I'm doing this. And they're like, who the hell are you? Well, who makes you think that you have the right to do that? So I'm telling you, people, go on and see how highly trained this person is. The reason she did that video, I love it, she needed to, is because so much criticism, because someone wants to take someone down that's actually helping people. Now, if it doesn't
Yes.
connect with you, keep taking your medication. Move along.
It's, I feel like we don't have to be all or nothing with
Right.
this either,
Right.
and it's such a polarizing conversation. And
It
then
is.
the minute you mention like there's alternatives to medication, did you know this? People are like, you're trying to tell people to not take their meds. I'm like, no, but
Mm-mm.
did you know there are people that meds are not helpful for? Do you know that there are people out there that don't want to be on medication? Do you know that there are people out there that have severe side effects of medication? It's making them worse. Do you know that? I don't think most people realize that.
Right.
There's a whole group of people that medications might not be helpful for. And so or they don't want them, and that's the audience that I'm talking to, or eventually the person who is on medications for 20 years and realizing that they've been numb for 20 years. That's
Mhm.
also the person I'm talking to. So it's
I,
interesting because I don't know if you can see it behind me. You probably can't. It's right there. It's a little golden unicorn.
um,
You can't really see it. Anyway, it's a little golden unicorn that my colleague Jen just sent to me. And she's like, you are my golden unicorn. And I'm like, so I guess maybe that's what I want to be, is everyone's golden unicorn.
do
you
you
know?
want to know what I say? That's funny you say that because I feel like we're like soul sisters. I said, in my lifetime, I want to make a herd of unicorns. my goal as a master connector, I will make a herd of unicorns. You watch it. I will make it. And
Really, I'm your first one in the
yep,
herd.
you're a herd. So it's like, we've got to make this herd of unicorns so that people don't go, whoa, we've got this one person. And I'm like, no,
Yes,
there's a lot
we
of
have
people
many.
doing this work. There's many. It's just who you connect with. So like Teralyn is phenomenal. And if it connects with you, don't get discouraged. Like I said, if there's not, keep watching videos until you connect with the right doctor, the right
Right.
person, the right coach. There's coaches that are doing it.
Oh
There
yeah.
are doctors, there are therapists, there are all different. But if you have someone that is just solely, and I mean, I know someone personally, so it's not that, the only thing that the doctor says to him every time he comes in for his uncontrollable anxiety is, you can just take more out of him.
Yep.
I'm here to tell you, those kind of doctors are causing more harm than healing. Find someone who will listen to you and start looking into what underlying conditions are causing your problem, but what other things you can do nutritionally and supplementally to maybe give your body what you need to heal.
Yes.
I think.
I look at mental health, like especially, and I'm like, this doesn't happen overnight. Like a mental health issue doesn't suddenly come on, like it's a progression of things. And so what makes us think that one solution is gonna change everything about your world? Like medication is one I'm air quoting if you can't see me, solution. you know and just so you guys know, I'm not anti-pharmacy. Sometimes I
Right.
ride the line, like sometimes I ride the line, in there, but because I've seen the damage.
Yeah.
I've seen the damage. And I also know just a smidgen about genetic coding and how that interplays with dopamine and serotonin. And so somebody who's got a genetic code that your body basically hangs on to more dopamine, and now they're taking Adderall, that person's probably extremely anxious, you
Yep.
know, and,
Or they
and
end
they
up
don't know why.
with psychosis and they get
It,
diagnosed schizophrenic and bipolar because now they're taking Adderall and
yes,
it got too high. Yep.
yes,
This is the
I get
problem,
it.
people, and the biggest problem that we deal with now is that there's so many of these diagnoses that are happening within minutes that someone has a crisis, a mental health crisis that occurs, and they're scratching their head going, I don't know whether that really is me. I don't think so. And
Mhm.
only you can be the advocate for yourself, making sure as you go. And that's the point of doing these mental health activism things. People like uh, Dr. Teralyn or on TikTok blowing it up is because they're coming out and saying things that people are saying, I think that might be what happened to me. You're like, woo. Or maybe I could
Exactly.
try this. Or, like I
Yeah.
follow Callie Estes, Dr.
Mhm.
Callie Estes, and she's an addiction.
She's a great friend of mine, actually.
Yeah. And so being
Mhm.
in the same realms of addiction, I love the idea that she did jump into the realms of amino acid and nutrition, because without adequately treatment centers starting to go down that path, we truly aren't treating the person.
Right.
Statistically, we are getting less than 10% success rates, which are deplorable, and that there is a difference. And there are treatment centers that are bringing on nutrition. And you're right, it's rare, but they are bringing it
Yep.
on. Like, where it's all organic and gluten free and all
I
that. And
think
there's
it's
more.
geography plays a huge role in some of this,
Might be.
geographically. Yeah. The Midwest is not quite there yet. You know, we're
Yeah,
not there
you
yet.
got some brats. You got some brats going on over there. Beer
Yes.
boiled brats, which are the best.
Not for your mental health, but they're
Now
good
your
for your
mental
taste
health, they
buds.
taste good. But that's
Exactly.
what they say. I always like when people get crazy, right? Because I always say, listen, people, you can see I do like to eat. So
Yeah.
not
It's not about not eating. And
that's right.
sometimes, to be honest, sometimes it's about the timing of the food you eat. Like, when are you eating protein? Are you doing it all at the end of the day? Maybe you should break it up and do it throughout the day. So there's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to nutrition and mental health. But I think the conversation, it's exciting now. I feel like amino acids are finally having their moment,
Yeah,
in the mental health and addiction world. Like, yay, finally we're having a moment here, people. So pay attention.
right,
The moment is now,
right.
right? And when that happens, there is going to be a lot more conflict between modern medicine and like functional type medicine. And so you see that you see that on my TikTok every day, like you're talking about, like there's this polarizing conversation that I'm not starting, but it happens in my comments section. It's so bizarre to me. I'm
It
like,
does. I've seen that because I
I'm
follow
not
like
being
little things.
polarizing, you know? Yes.
No, but you do such a beautiful job at navigating that. And I do love that you do, like, I'm always kind of perplexed, the trolls, so to speak. I'm perplexed because I am so thankful for people like yourself that are willing to come out and face the firing squad, so to speak, because people do take a lot of, they feel like you're putting someone at jeopardy. She's not, she basically, we constantly are saying to
Would never
people,
do that.
never,
Yes, would never do that.
never. But what, what,
As a
what
matter
is,
of fact, I still tell people, I'm like, if you're going to take amino acids or any of these things, particularly amino acids, I'm like, to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist. Like, I don't alienate people from modern medicine at all. And so, because I feel like there's room for everybody here, like there's room for everyone here. And it's really interesting because a lot of my clients will go back to their doctor and the doctors will be like, so what is it that you're doing? Because they're feeling better, and so they'll pass my name on to that doctor. I've gotten doctor referrals before, and
I
I'm like,
literally went into my doctor after going on large doses, went to a treatment center, got taken off overnight, went back to my original doctor and said, listen, I can't think straight. I can't live without Adderall. I need something. Is there something that I can take that won't have the same repercussions? So he prescribed me Vyvanse.
oh,
So it wasn't until this journey. So I talk from a very personal place that I had to
yeah,
learn. And so don't think for one moment it is all just a treatment center taught this. Like
no,
what Dr. Teralyn has done, it's on our own personal journey, but then a light bulb goes off and you want to share this information. I did learn how I needed to eat to support my dopamine levels. I did learn what supplements were going to help me with serotonin and dopamine, and it never goes away, just like what you said. You're
no.
constantly,
And we kind of go in and out of it over years. So I'll give you the example. So my husband's in recovery too, 30 years. So I noticed from him, mood changes and things more than he notices within himself, because everybody lacks self-awareness to some degree. So every time that the seasons change, he knows that he has to do two things. One is to take 5-HTP, and the other is to improve his vitamin D. And so he'll start doing that October, November, and he'll do it all the way through like March. And then he'll stop for the summer and he'll be fine. And then he'll start it all back up again. And that works for him. And it reduces his negativity and irritability over the winter months, because it gets pretty terrible here in the winter.
well, you
So,
guys,
but yeah, so he's learned, the ebbs and flows of his own mood and what to do about it. I don't look at amino acids as supplementation as something you have to take for a lifetime.
right.
Otherwise, that's the same thing as the message we get for pharmaceuticals. Like, when can I stop? Oh, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I do believe that anytime somebody is prescribed a psychiatric medication, on that day, there should be conversation about how to end it.
Right.
you know how long is this going to be, blah blah blah. But we have these conversations that are ambiguous. They're like, well, I don't know, but if you're feeling good, just stay on it. And so then people stop asking, they stop talking, they stop
Yeah.
asking the questions. So, but I think a lot of this is just like this personal journey of understanding self, like what makes me feel better, and then do that thing, do more of those things. So the ebbs and flows of this, like I don't take amino acids every day. I take the nutrient cofactors every day, your multivitamins, your omegas, your vitamin D, especially omegas now that I'm aging. And sometimes I'll take the amino acids now. When I was first going through, I'll call it the repletion program of self, I took them every day for about a year, and then I started pulling back, and now I just kind of take them as needed. And if I happen to fall down into that, I notice that I'm falling down into the valley, I'll go back on protocol again for a while. So I don't
I do.
know.
Like,
Again,
I
this is just,
will change different protocols. I'll notice if I notice something different, I'll be like, okay, I think this really helps me. Like, one thing that I noticed recently was saffron. Love
oh,
saffron.
saffron.
I
Yeah,
It's a great
saffron.
thing. So for me, that I noticed, I added that to my repertoire, and I was like, all right, I really like this. Now, like you said, I think that there's breaks that we need to take at times. It's not something that we need forever. Or maybe if I did need to take saffron the rest of my life, truthfully, that would be the least of my worries in comparison to other things.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you're not going to overdose on this stuff. You're not going to be addicted to it, like
Yeah, let's hope not.
exactly. So
Dr. Teralyn, I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate your work as a person, as a human being, that you're putting yourself out there. I do appreciate, because I notice, there are people that come at you, and I'm telling you, people go on and like her on TikTok because her shares are always uplifting. They're always fun to watch, and they're always insightful. They always have information, but more importantly, we're creating community of people that no longer feel alone. You have 490,000 people that no longer feel like they're the only person that have these sentiments or these feelings. And
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot of people. I really appreciate you saying this, because sometimes it's easy to get lost in some of the negative stuff that happens, right? Because more negative people are more likely to say something than positive people. That's just the way that it is, right? So I have to remember that there's all these people out there just watching and waiting and learning quietly, versus the ones that are saying something that's not nice or kind or understanding, like they have zero understanding or zero tolerance for something new. So I appreciate you bringing that to the conversation.
And that being said, make sure that when you go out there, you like the posts and actually start commenting, because it makes people not feel like they're the only person that feel that way. Dr. Teralyn did a post on severe postpartum, and I was a person that spoke to me. I dealt with severe postpartum at a time in my life, and it was beautiful to see how many people opened up, because many, many, many people have had severe postpartum, and your transparency humanized yourself so much that I love that about you, because when someone humanizes it, instantly I'm like, but then you also had to do replies to people that were derogative. And so you deal with both. You were like, well, you were like, listen, I got put on medication during this period of my life, and this is what happened to me. So the transparency, these activism work sites, we need to support them, and we need to link arms. And all the information about Dr. Teralyn is down below. She's blown it up. You can see she has got endorsements from lots of major people, extensive training. I do take it long and hard. So when I endorse somebody or when I go after them, I hope you understand that at Alternative Meds, we're not like, it's just not anyone that I want to put on this podcast. It has to be someone that understands orthomolecular, nutritional components, the therapeutic aspect. That is why she has got the floor, people. She is good. She knows.
I'm the golden unicorn joining the unicorn
She's one
group.
of the unicorns in the herd of unicorns.
Exactly.
We will have a conference in Sedona with a herd of unicorns in the near future.
Right. I love it. I love it.
And we're going to get Teralyn out here. We'll get some Red Rock pictures with her out here, with all of our people out here in Sedona. Thank you, Dr. Teralyn. All the information about Dr. Teralyn is below. Please go on, like and share all of her social media posts. Please share this video. If you're in need of doing coaching, if you need of residential care, reach out. We can help you. There's people that can help. Don't feel like there's no one that can help. There's all different levels of care. There are an explosion of integrative and functional medicine people that are out there, everything down to a coach, to full-blown psychiatrists, to residential care, that are doing this supportive care. Our goal is to create this activism network of individuals, of providers like Dr. Teralyn. So thank you for joining us. Like, share, make sure that you subscribe.
Let's make this the norm. Let's make this the norm. Yes.
Yeah, we want to be considered well, the beauty, when Lyle Murphy started Alternative to Med Center, it's beautiful. And at the same time, it needs to not be alternative anymore. It needs to be mainstream.
Right. It should be norms. Just call it norms.
Yeah. Well,
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you.
Yes.
And
thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.